Billionaire CEO's shocking shout at maid's daughter reveals incredible truth. 7.5 beat deal exposed. The sound of a voice echoing through the lavish halls stopped Sarah in her tracks as she mopped the marble floor of the Langston estate. It was a blend of power and anxiety, a primal scream of a man battling his demons. David Langston, the billionaire CEO, was preparing for a high-stakes meeting that could change his empire. Yet here he was, grappling with something more profound as she quietly scrubbed the floor, a world away from his relentless ambitions. But Sarah's mind was elsewhere. It was lunchtime, and she could already hear the bright laughter of her daughter Lily drifting in from the kitchen. Her radiant smile could light up the darkest of days. "Remember, Mom," Lily said, her eyes wide with dreams. "Even astronauts need to keep looking up." Every day was a balancing act for Sarah. She worked tirelessly in this opulent prison, hoping that someday Lily's dreams would float away. She worked to ensure that her little girl could dash for the stars, leaving behind their cramped apartment for a better life. On that afternoon, with her mop in hand, fate nudged David's path closer to hers. Leaning against the kitchen counter, he accidentally eavesdropped on a moment that unraveled deep in Sarah's heart. "You know, Lily, success is more than money," she said softly. "It's about love and being brave enough to chase your dreams." That warm honesty struck him like a bolt, slicing through his meticulously constructed walls. For a brief moment, he was that boy from the projects again, filled with hope and pain, not the king of finance that he had become. Then, in a flash of anger and vulnerability, he confronted Sarah. "You think you know me? You think I don't care?" His words gutted the space. The room blazed with unspoken truths. Shock stole Sarah's breath as the harsh lines of his demeanor softened. "I pulled myself from nothing. You don't know how hard it was." Memories crested, painful and raw, a harsh past devoid of compassion. Sarah felt her heart race. This was not the man she thought she knew. There was a crack in his armor. Before any resolution could shine forth, a damning discovery was unearthed. David's hidden betrayals began to swirl back into view, darkening her newfound perspective. Her thoughts twisted, tangled in the promise of a better life. The burgeoning respect she felt for his vulnerabilities clashing with the shock of new revelations. How could someone so ruthless also have such depth? With emotions spiraling, the stakes rose. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As they stood, two souls caught in the whirlwind of ambition and humanity, the tension between them thickened. Was it possible for David to break the chains of his own past? And could Sarah dare to hope for a connection beyond their class divide? The echo of their tumultuous encounter hung in the air, asking whether hearts steeped in layers of hurt could heal. Would forgiveness find its way through the tumult that lay ahead, or would the ghosts of their histories keep them forever apart? David stood frozen in the kitchen, heart racing, as Sarah finished mopping the floor. Her expression had shifted from shock to a determined calm, but the air between them crackled with unresolved tension. The echoes of their confrontation resonated in their hearts like a distant thunderstorm, each moment heavy with possibility. "Why do you keep fighting?" he finally asked, a raw vulnerability threading through his voice, his brow furrowed. The facade of the ruthless CEO faltered. This man was more than just an untouchable billionaire. He was a product of his past, haunted by the memories of struggle. He couldn't help but be drawn to the strength radiating from Sarah, the way she balanced her job and her dreams for her daughter with such grace. "Because that's what mothers do," she replied quietly, catching his gaze and holding it. "We fight for the futures of those we love, even when the odds are against us." Her voice was firm without being harsh, yet it laid bare the pain of her life. David felt the walls he'd built begin to crack further. He remembered his own mother, a fiercely determined woman who worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. That burning desire to succeed had propelled him forward, yet felt weighty now, as if success had cost him his humanity. "Do you regret it?" he asked, his throat tightening. "All the sacrifices, the things I did to get here, was it worth it?" "Regret is a heavy burden," Sarah said softly, meeting his eyes with an intensity that pierced through their emotional distance. "But you can't change the past. You can only choose how you move forward." David's mind raced. She was right. The past clung to him like a shadow, but the fear of confronting his own choices paralyzed him. What did a billionaire like him even know about moving forward, when his own decisions had left a trail of destruction? They stood in a charged silence, the weight of their respective worlds closing in. It was a moment of reflection, yet time felt alive with electric urgency. Would David's next move be a step toward redemption or a retreat into old habits? Suddenly, the door swung open, and Lily rushed in, her joyful laughter cutting through the tension. "I made cookies," she exclaimed, her small, bright face lighting up the room. "Want to help me decorate?" A warmth spread through Sarah's heart as she witnessed her daughter's untainted happiness. It also reminded her of the path she must carve for Lily's future. And there stood David, caught in a moment of tenderness. Could he find a way to connect with this innocent light? "Sure, I'd love to help," David found himself saying, his voice steady yet gentle. The decision felt significant, like a bridge forming between their worlds. Perhaps it wouldn't be so difficult to change after all. But as they gathered around the kitchen counter, laughter filling the air, a notification buzzed on David's phone, shattering the moment. It was about the deal that could either save or destroy everything he had built. He glanced at Sarah, a tidal wave of doubt crashing against the budding hope within him. How could he balance the weight of his business life with a newfound possibility of something real? The juxtaposition felt impossible, yet exhilarating. As David looked into Sarah's eyes, a question hung in the air. Could he navigate both worlds without losing himself, or would ambition blind him once more? He wanted to believe in possibility, yet uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud on the horizon, ready to unleash the storm. Immediately, with a flicker of determination, he made a decision he would reach for both. But the true test lay ahead, and as laughter washed over them, he couldn't shake the feeling that the journey was just beginning. The door to his office loomed behind him, harrowing and vital, hinting at the choices that awaited him. Would he take the plunge into vulnerability or retreat behind the walls he had built? Only time would tell. As they stood together, laughter echoing around the kitchen, David's stomach twisted with the weight of his phone's news. The notifications blared in the background, a stark reminder of the relentless pressure hovering over him. He took a deep breath, trying to push aside the worry. This moment felt too precious to taint. "Do you want sprinkles or chocolate chips?" Lily asked, her small hands clutching adorable decorations. Her innocence was alight, pulling him away from the noise of his mind. "Definitely chocolate chips," he replied, pushing down his unease. Watching Lily's face light up filled him with a warmth that momentarily chased the shadows away. Sarah smiled, watching them, and for a brief moment, the walls he built felt like they were cracking more than a little. This girl was a reminder of joy, of real connections, something he had lost touch with through years spent poring over spreadsheets and negotiating deals. They began decorating the cookies together, a joyous chaos of icing and laughter. David took his time, crafting each design with care, trying to drown out the nagging voice that insisted he should be focusing on more important matters. But amid the frosting and sprinkles, he felt a strange sense of peace washing over him. "Can I help you with that one?" Lily asked, pointing at the cookie he was trying to decorate with precision. "Of course. What do you think we should add?" She beamed, her enthusiasm infectious. "Let us make it a rainbow cookie. It'll be magical." He chuckled, envisioning the colorful creation. Magical it is. With her guidance, they transformed the cookie. As laughter filled the air, David let the warmth of the moment seep in, feeling the comfort of a simple joy he had almost forgotten. Just then, His phone buzzed again, louder this time, cutting through the laughter. His heart sank at the sight of the message preview. Details about the deal rolled across the screen: finance figures, meeting times, market analysis, and it all started to pull him back into the depth of responsibility and ambition he thought he had briefly escaped. "Mr. So," Sarah teased lightly, raising an eyebrow at him. "Looks like the kingdom is calling you back." He felt a pang of guilt. The words felt heavy on his tongue. How could he even think about stepping back into that world when he was experiencing something so important right now? Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Are you all right?" The concern in her voice unsettled him. Was this little girl truly worrying about him? The contrast of her innocence against his adult burdens made his heart ache. "Yeah, just a work thing. Don't worry about it," he responded, forcing a smile. As he glanced at Sarah, he noticed the resolve in her eyes. She was a fighter. Her presence reminded him of those hidden passions he'd lost along the way. "Maybe you should just be here now," Sarah suggested gently, her voice soothing. "Sometimes we need to make a choice about where our priorities lie." He opened his mouth to reply, but the sound of his phone buzzing again cut through. It was a message from his business partner, a reminder of the stakes, his empire resting on the edge of a blade. All those years climbing, conquering, and succeeding, could they mean anything if the price was missing moments like these? Would he lose sight of what truly mattered? Lily pulled the cookie toward her, grinning ear to ear. "Look, our rainbow cookie is totally magical. Look at it sparkle." David's heart swelled with warmth, but doubt still hovered like a heavy fog. He needed to find out what mattered more: the relentless demands of his career or the potential for transformation from the simple moments of connection. As the cookie glimmered under the kitchen light, he felt his resolve sharpen. Could he really choose both paths without completely losing himself? The phone buzzed, yet again a reminder that he was still tethered to the world of business. But just then, Lily, winking at her mom, whispered, "Can we make another cookie? An even bigger, more magical one?" The question lingered in the air, pulling David into a pivotal moment. How could he decide what kind of magic he wanted in his life? As Sarah's gaze met his, filled with understanding, he knew they were at a crossroads. The answer lay in the cookie and the laughter, but what was he willing to sacrifice to protect that warmth? Would he step deeper into this newfound life or return to the cold halls of his empire? The choice loomed ahead. David's heart raced, torn between the ringing demands of his phone and the joyous spark in Lily's eyes. She bounced excitedly, urging for another cookie, her enthusiasm pure and untainted by adult complexity. For her, the kitchen was a realm of magic, a place where dreams were baked into sugar and warmth. "Let us make the biggest rainbow cookie ever," she declared, her small fists punching the air as if declaring victory. "I love that idea," Sarah encouraged, her voice filled with warmth. The sound of her laughter was like music, something that wrapped around him and offered a brief escape from the chaos of his responsibilities. "All right," David said, steeling himself against the tug of uncertainty pooling in his stomach. He needed to create a moment that would fill their memories, something they could look back on. A cookie wasn't just a treat. It was a symbol of togetherness, of connection. "Let us gather all the colors. We're making a masterpiece." As they collected sprinkles and icing, David found himself focusing on the task at hand. The chaos of colors soothed the familiar tightness in his chest, and he soon got lost in the delightful mess of creativity. With each swirl of icing, the burdens he carried felt slightly lighter. It was as if each layer of frosting was pushing away the shadows of his thoughts. Lily dove into her task, slapping icing onto the cookie, as much on her hands and face as on the cookie itself. She giggled, and that joy coursed through David. His momentary escape was like breathing fresh air after being held underwater for too long, but a swath of purple icing formed under David's careful hands. "How about we add some more sprinkles? You can never have too many. Can we put stars on it?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "Of course. Everything magical needs stars." He flashed a smile, realizing just how easy it was to shed the skin of the businessman when faced with the simple demands of a child. Before long, the cookie was a chaotic explosion of color and sweetness, a reflection of their shared joy. The kitchen was filled with laughter, and for a little while, David felt whole again. It made him question if he could step away from the life that often felt like it was pulling him in too many directions. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, shattering the fragile bubble surrounding them. He winced, the sound jarring in the warmth of the moment. Again? Sarah sighed, crossing her arms. How many times do they have to interrupt? It's important, David replied, glancing quickly at the screen. His business partner was relentless, always needing answers, updates, or reassurances. Lily, what if we wrote a message on the back of the cookie? He said quickly, hoping to redirect her attention. Something like we believe in magic. Yes, Lily screamed, jumping up and down as if they discovered a treasure map. He could feel Sarah's gaze studying him, a silent judgment coursing between them. She was watching him navigate two worlds, one defined by meetings and numbers, the other by laughter and sugar. Would he own how this felt? Could he lean into it more? As the icing glimmered and the laughter continued to soar around him, David felt the tug of his career stop battling against the call of connection. The choice loomed above him, growing more significant with each passing second. I'll be right back. Just need to, he muttered, excusing himself. He stepped outside, the air crisp against his face, but his heart was racing with equal parts urgency and desire. Could he really find a balance? The stakes felt so high. What did success even mean without these moments? With determined steps, he took a deep breath, ready to embrace the tension of the unknown. He was about to respond when suddenly a voice pulled him back into the kitchen. David, it was Lily. You'll come see our big cookie, right? As hope illuminated her face, every part of him longed to stay. The pull was magnetic. The choice was clear. But would it be enough? Would stepping away lead him to what mattered most, or would it only expose what he might lose? As he stepped back, inside, the kitchen filled with laughter once more, David felt the tide of his life shift in a way he hadn't anticipated. What would happen when he chose to pursue happiness over obligation? As David stepped back into the kitchen, the vibrant colors of the cookie greeted him like an old friend. He took a moment to absorb the sight. Lily beaming with pure delight, her hands smeared in bright icing, and Sarah stirring the air with her laughter. The phone slipped from his thoughts as he rejoined them, the pull of duty momentarily forgotten. Look at our masterpiece, Lily exclaimed, proudly showing off the cookie that was as much art as it was dessert. It's beautiful, David beamed, the words spilling from him with sincerity. In that instant, he felt like he could conquer anything, not just deals and contracts, but also moments like this that filled his heart with warmth. What should we call it? Sarah asked, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel, her eyes sparkling. How about the Rainbow of Hope? Lily suggested, her voice serious yet playful as she leaned into the moment. David chuckled. That sounds perfect. It captures everything we're feeling right now. Hope and maybe a little bit of magic. Just like that, the seriousness of his earlier dilemma faded. He found joy in the simplicity. This was exactly what he needed, these moments of authenticity that made the complexities of his life feel light. Yet beneath that joy, a whisper of anxiety lingered. He glanced at his phone again, the screen still lit up with unread messages. They were like unattended shadows waiting to take him away from this bliss. But today, he chose the laughter echoing through the kitchen over spreadsheets and negotiations. Can I have a bite? Lily interjected, breaking the spell of his thoughts. Her eyes lit up, reflecting a question that made him smile. Of course. The baker always gets the first taste, he declared dramatically, picking up a slice of their colorful creation. He took a generous bite, the sweet flavors bursting in his mouth, and he watched as her face mirrored his enthusiasm. This is the best cookie ever, Lily shouted, bouncing again. It really is, Sarah agreed, her laughter bubbling with sincerity. You're a natural, David. He felt a swell of pride, awakening something deep within him. No, we're a team, he corrected her, stepping closer to them. But as the laughter soared, a weight settled back in his mind. The brief reprieve couldn't last forever. He could feel the phone waiting silently, demanding his attention, as if to remind him that the world outside wasn't put on hold. Just then, Sarah caught his gaze. "What is it?" she asked gently, her voice a mixture of concern and curiosity. "It's just I have a lot on my plate right now," he confessed, the noise around him dimming slightly. "Business is intense. We can handle it for a little while longer," she said firmly, her tone softening. "Just breathe and be present." Those words hung in the air. Breathe, be present. Wisdom wrapped in simplicity. David found himself focusing on Lily, who was now trying to reach for a star-shaped sprinkle that had fallen on the table. "What if I told you that you could do anything for just one day?" he asked, inspired by her boundless imagination. "I'd build a castle of cookies," Lily shouted, her voice bursting with excitement. "Yes," David exclaimed, the vision igniting a flame of creativity within him. "Let us make it happen. A cookie castle it is." Sarah smiled knowingly, the corners of her mouth lifting. "I think we just might need a bit more icing." As they dove into the remnants of their creative chaos, lathering cookies with frosting and stacking them like bricks, David felt the weight of his business concerns start to lift. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe he did have a choice in how he spent his time, in what legacy he wanted to leave. But the phone buzzed again, this time insistent. A reminder of the world waiting for him just outside this cozy haven. His heart sank slightly. He hesitated, the duality of his life crashing back into focus. Could he really continue embracing the joy of this moment, while also facing the tensions waiting for him? As much as he wanted to, doubt began to creep back in. "David?" Lily asked, noticing his distraction. "Yeah? Can you build the cookie castle with us forever?" He glanced at her hopeful eyes, a world of innocence and dreams shining bright. David realized then that perhaps the most significant project he needed to work on wasn't a deal or a profit margin, but rather the relationships that filled his heart with warmth. What if he could weave both worlds together? With a deep breath, he took a step closer to the cookie castle, ready to commit himself fully. But as they built higher and higher, a sudden crash echoed from outside the kitchen door. "What was that?" Sarah whispered, her voice suddenly laced with tension. David's heart dropped. "I have to check," he said, moving toward the sound, knowing that whatever it was could change everything. And as he reached for the door handle, he felt a familiar question linger in his mind. Could he really bring the magic of this moment into the chaos of his reality? David's hand trembled as he reached for the doorknob. The laughter of Lily and Sarah faded into the background, replaced by a pounding in his chest that echoed the uncertainty gathered outside. He paused, casting a quick glance over his shoulder. Lily was still bubbling with excitement, oblivious to the tension. Sarah's brow furrowed as she watched him, concern etched across her face. "Just a moment," he said, trying to mask the unease in his voice. As he turned the knob and stepped out into the hallway, a sinking feeling settled in his stomach. The kitchen's warmth seemed a lifetime away from whatever awaited on the other side. The hallway was dimly lit, an uneasy quiet surrounding him. The usual noise of the house felt muted, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. He edged closer to the sound, a low thud followed by a shuffling noise. Each step carried an urgency as he opened the door leading to the backyard. What he found sent an electric chill through his veins. The picnic table, once adorned with their baking supplies, now lay overturned, papers scattered like leaves in a whirlwind. And there, amidst the fallen chaos, was his assistant, Alan, his face pale, his expression tense. "David." Alan's voice broke, urgency fueling his tone. "We need to talk." "What happened?" David demanded, stepping cautiously closer. The disarray painted a picture of something gone wrong, something far bigger than a simple accident. There's a situation. Alan took a breath, his words racing to keep up with the urgency of his tone. "In the office. The deal is in jeopardy. Someone's pushing back harder than we expected. It's linked to that email you mentioned." David's heart dropped further. The deal had been everything. Months of negotiation hung in precarious balance. What do you mean linked to an email? Someone leaked the information about the merger. It's creating chaos among stakeholders. I tried to handle it, but Alan's voice faltered, and the gravity of his statement sank in like a stone. David clenched his hands, frustration bubbling within him. You should have contacted me immediately. Alan flinched, the weight of his failure visible. I didn't think it'd de-escalate so quickly, but we have a chance to counter this if we act now. With a swift nod, David processed the urgency, but felt the mounting pressure threatening to spiral out of control. He glanced back at the kitchen, where creativity and laughter still thrived, a beacon of solace far removed from the unfolding turmoil. But what could he do? He had a decision to make. Stay here, where the warmth of innocence and joy thrived, or step back into the fray, the world of contracts and negotiations beckoning him with chaos? David Allen prompted, pulling him from the internal battle. We have to go. Now. Just give me a minute, David said, his voice steadier than he felt. He turned back to the kitchen, uncertain but determined. Steeling himself, he stepped back inside, the familiar sounds wrapping around him like a hug. Lily, Sarah both turned to him, their smiles bright, a momentary refuge amidst the storm. Can you hold on to that cookie castle idea for a little longer? He asked, forcing a smile. I might need to make some calls first. Lily pouted slightly, but nodded enthusiastically. But promise you'll come back? Promise, he replied, a knot tightening in his chest as he turned back toward the door. As he stepped into the hall again, the tug-of-war between the peaceful joy of the kitchen and the corporate tremors pulling at him felt excruciating. He took a deep breath, ready to navigate the turmoil looming ahead. But just as he reached the door, the faint sound of laughter echoed back at him, a reminder that sometimes magic could exist even amid turmoil. It made him question everything once more. Was the journey worth it? And in the background, just beyond the horizon, he spotted something moving, a shadow, shifting an indication that the storm wasn't just a corporate affair. It was personal and it was coming fast. David felt the thrill of unease deepen as he stepped back into the dim corridor. The air around him thickened like molasses, each breath heavy with the weight of his decisions. Alan followed close behind, ushering him toward the front door. David could still hear Lily and Sarah's giggles mixing with the clinking of baking pan lids, an innocent melody that pressed against his heart. What if we get the bad news? Alan's voice broke in, though it was a question he hadn't wanted to ask. David shook his head, casting a glance back over his shoulder one last time. We have to handle this first. It's our lives on the line. With one last deep breath, he twisted the doorknob and opened the front door. The late afternoon sun flooded the hallway, harsh and unforgiving against the chaos that awaited them. As they stepped out, reality hit harder than any storm could. The drive to the office was filled with a tense silence. David's mind raced, each thought a blur of strategy and worry. He envisioned the meeting room, the board members' faces, and the potential fallout of the leak. He felt the weight of their expectant gazes, the pressure mounting upon him like 1,000 bricks stacked high. It was more than just a deal. It was his reputation, his dreams plastered onto that fragile negotiation paper. David, Alan interrupted his thoughts. We're going to get through this. We will figure it out. He wanted to believe that reassurance, to cling to it like a lifeline. But doubts pooled in his stomach, threatening to spill over. What if it's too late? What if the damage is already done? Alan glanced at him, his own worry evident. We won't know until we get there. Let us focus on what we can control. As they pulled up to the office building, the stark reality of the towering facade swallowed him whole. The glass windows reflected his anxious expression, a reminder that the outside world was watching, waiting for them to either rise or fall. Alan jumped out first, his energy unwavering and determined. David hesitated, his heart racing at the thought of stepping back into that realm. But the echoes of laughter from the kitchen haunted him, urging him onward. Ignoring the goosebumps that crawled along his skin, he followed Alan inside. The atmosphere dripped with tension, each step echoing louder than the last. The receptionist regarded them with a worried glance, the uneasiness evident in the air. "Good luck, I think you'll need it." Inside the meeting room, a round table awaited them, the board members seated like soldiers ready for war. When David entered, murmurs whispered across the table, eyes narrow and skeptical, casting him into an arena of scrutiny. "David," the chairperson greeted, his tone stiff, "you're just in time. I hope you have some answers for us." David swallowed hard, the walls pressing in on him. "I do. I need to address the leak before we proceed with discussions." But it was too late. Just as he opened his mouth to elaborate, the door swung open with an aggressive force. All heads turned as a figure stormed in, visibly agitated. David's stomach twisted. The figure was none other than his rival, Mark, a thorn in his side. Well, look what we have here." Mark sneered, his smirk cutting through the tension like a knife. "Are you ready to explain how your precious deal is falling apart? Or are you still spinning tales?" David's heart raced. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a challenge that threatened to upend everything he'd worked for. The room hung in an unsteady silence, anticipation electrifying the air. "David," Alan whispered, concern creeping into his voice. "Don't let him provoke you." But in that moment, as Mark's confidence washed over the room, David felt a flicker of resolve harden within him. Maybe he could turn the tide. Maybe he could wrest control of the narrative. "Actually, I have some news that is going to change everything," David said, gripping the edge of the table. He locked eyes with Mark, a pulse of adrenaline firing through him. As the shadow of truth loomed closer, he knew this was about to get even more complicated. What if the pushback wasn't just external, but had roots deeper than he imagined? The confrontation had only begun, and it was no longer just about the deal. What had he awakened? David's heart pounded in his chest as he fixed his gaze on Mark. The board members were suddenly muted, their attention fully absorbed by the unfolding tension. The air thickened, every second stretching into eternity as David took a breath, feeling both the weight of their expectations and the flicker of a spark igniting within him. "I've been doing some digging," David began, his voice steadier than he felt. He scanned the faces around the table, noticing a mix of surprise and intrigue, but mostly concern. "And I think I may know how this leak happened. It didn't come from our internal team. It's more complex than that." Mark's eyebrows shot up, his smug expression faltering for just a moment. But David didn't let it faze him. He pushed forward, the adrenaline coursing through him like wildfire. "I've traced it back to a few key players outside our organization, competitors looking to sabotage our negotiations." Gasps rippled across the table. A few exchanged concerned looks while others leaned in, curious. David could feel excitement bubbling beneath the surface, a chance to gain the upper hand, to reclaim what was his. "You think you can throw accusations at me?" Mark scoffed, attempting to mask his intrigue with bravado. But David wasn't buying it. "This isn't just about pointing fingers, Mark. It's about protecting everything we've worked for," David replied, his voice firm. "Your arrogance might put you at risk, but our success relies on trust and transparency." The chairperson shifted uncomfortably, casting a quick glance at the grim-faced board members who were clearly weighing their options. "David," Alan urged quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "remember what's at stake." David caught Alan's eye, his friend's concern magnifying the urgency of the moment. But there was no backing down now. "I've got a plan," he continued, focusing back on the group, "but it requires us to act swiftly and decisively. If we don't take control, this deal could slip through our fingers. Are you any closer to identifying who's behind the leak?" The chairperson interjected, his tone revealing both expectant hope and desperate concern. David nodded, taking a gamble on his lead. "I've got a meeting scheduled for later today with a source who claims to have critical information. If we can get ahead of this, we can counteract their manipulation, destroy their narrative before it spreads." Mark sneered again, but there was nervousness behind his ice-cold demeanor. "You really think one meeting will save your deal? You're grasping at straws." "Maybe I am," David shot back, his determination solidifying. But I'm grasping for our future, not my ego. The silence in the room felt electric, and David could almost taste his resolve fighting against the tidal wave of fear. It didn't matter what Mark thought. He had to believe what he was saying. If this was their last chance, he needed every ounce of clarity he could muster. But the moment was shattered when the door swung open yet again, interrupting him. Another figure stepped in, a petite woman holding a small notebook, her cheeks flushed. There was something oddly familiar about her, but the room drowned in noise as the board whispered among themselves, rising in curiosity and irritation. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with urgency. "I believe I have information that you need to hear regarding the leak." David's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the break they needed? Or was it just another curveball in an already chaotic day? "Who are you?" Mark snapped, his expression showing annoyance mixed with surprise. Ignoring him, she stepped closer to David, her eyes locking onto his with fierce intensity. "I know who's behind this, and it's bigger than you think." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, and David could feel the tension spike again. The stakes had just climbed even higher. Or had he truly awakened? David's mind raced, fighting against the rising tide of questions. Who was she? And how could she possibly know anything about the leak? He felt the room shift around him, the board members leaning in, drawn into the gravity of her claim. "Please," David urged impatiently, urgency spilling from his lips. "What do you know?" The woman hesitated, glancing around the room as if weighing her options. A drop of sweat glistened on her forehead, her uncertain demeanor contrasting sharply with the intensity of her words. David sensed she held something powerful, something that could change everything. "I'm Emma," she finally said, her voice quaking slightly but growing stronger with each word. "My mother worked for one of the competitors you suspect. She heard things about an arrangement intended to sabotage your deal. It involves several key figures, and one of them might be closer than you think." David felt a chill wash over him. He scanned the faces of the board members, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. Emma's revelation felt like a jigsaw piece snapping into place. "What do you mean closer?" he demanded, instinctively moving towards her, driven by a fierce need to understand. Emma took a deep breath, her eyes darting between Mark and the rest of the board. "It's not just a leak, it's a full-blown plot. One of your own might be involved. I'm talking about someone in this room." Gasps echoed again, the tension cranking up another notch. David's gaze locked onto Mark, who remained unervingly calm. Could it be him? That would be a twist straight out of a bad thriller. But David's gut said it was worth exploring. "Prove it," Mark yelled, finally breaking his silence, his voice sharp like glass. "You're just some girl with no credibility." Ignoring him, David turned back to Emma. "Do you have proof? Anything tangible that can back up what you're saying?" A determined look crossed her face, courage igniting in her expression. "I have documents, conversations. I can give you access to what I've found, but you have to wait until tonight. It's hidden until then, and if I'm caught, it could be dangerous." The urgency in her voice pierced the tension hanging in the air. David's heartbeat thundered in his ears as he contemplated her words. "We don't have time to waste. If this is true, we need to act fast." "Exactly," Alan chimed in, his face ashen. "We can't let this opportunity slip away. This could save us." David nodded, driven by a surge of adrenaline that drowned out the chaos. He had to rally everyone around them. They couldn't afford any more delays. "Let us take her lead. Every moment counts." Mark crossed his arms, a hostile glare on his face. "And how can you be sure she's not leading you into a trap?" David closed his eyes for the briefest moment, picturing the bigger picture. If there's even a shred of truth in what she's saying, we owe it to ourselves to follow this through. Emma watched him, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. David knew he had to step out on a ledge, trusting both her and the fragile chance they had. "All right," he declared, summoning the strength that felt almost foreign. "This meeting is our shot. Can you deliver what we need tonight?" With a small nod, Emma stepped back, a flicker of determination glowing in her eyes. "I can, but I need your protection." They are watching, and they know I'm onto them. The weight of her words filled the room again as David turned to face the board members, his expression set and serious. They were standing on the edge of something momentous, a chance to reclaim their narrative and, possibly, their futures. "Then we'll protect you, Emma," he promised, feeling a surge of responsibility. "Let us expose whoever is behind this before it's too late." As the tension simmered, David couldn't shake the feeling that they were in for a bumpy ride. What shadows lurked in the corners of this unfolding plot? The stakes had just been raised, and David had no idea how deep the deception ran. The room buzzed with an undercurrent of urgency as David stood at the helm of uncertainty. Emma's revelation had ignited a fire, and everyone knew stakes were higher than ever. The board members exchanged anxious glances. They could feel the tension slice through the air like knife. "Everyone, listen up," David said, his voice infused with newfound authority. "MIS information could change everything. We need to put a plan in place immediately." The energy shifted, tension morphing into focus, each person absorbing the gravity of the moment. David could feel adrenaline pumping through him. He was ready to dive deep into this fight. As he navigated the conversation, his mind flickered back to the warmth of the kitchen, the laughter, the cookies, the innocence of Lily's eyes. That spark of joy was no longer just a distant memory. It was a beacon guiding him through the storm. He had to protect that feeling, ensure it wasn't lost amidst the chaos of business and betrayal. Mark's voice cut through David's thoughts. "You're risking everything on a hunch from a girl no one knows," he sneered, his skepticism boiling over. David shot him a glare, unyielding. "Keep underestimating, Mark. That's the first mistake." "Enough." The chairperson interjected, his patience wearing thin. "We need to decide our course of action. If what Emma is saying is true, we'll need to act quickly." David nodded sharply. "Emma, can you meet us tonight? We'll devise a plan to extract the information you have without drawing attention to ourselves." Emma bit her lip, the weight of importance settling heavily upon her. "Yes, but we must be careful. If they find out what I've shared," her words trailed off, fear flashing in her eyes. "What is at stake?" David pressed, urgency spurring him. "We can't afford to lose momentum. They know someone else onto them. If they suspect that I've talked," her voice trembled as worry washed over her, "they could silence me. I won't let that happen," he promised, the words escaping with a conviction he didn't fully feel but desperately wanted to embody. "We'll keep you safe." Looking around the room, David felt empowered. "Everyone, let us reach out to our security teams and prepare contingency plans. If we do this right, we can flip the narrative on Mark and anyone involved." The board members nodded, shifting into action mode, their fear morphing into determination. Time felt frenetically alive, the buzz of collaboration coursing through the tension. "I'll contact my contacts to gain additional intel before tonight," Alan said, his voice straining slightly under the tension. With the meeting set and plans in motion, David felt a swell of resolve tightening within him. They were entering into a battle, not just for the company but for truth and integrity. As they wrapped up, David tried to shake the weight of worry that had settled in his chest. It was time to face what lay outside, yet his heart ached for the laughter of the kitchen, to experience the joy he had just left behind. But now was different. This wasn't merely about competition. It was about connection, redemption. It was a chance to embody hope, not just for him, but for everyone who believed in their vision. He cast a glance back at Emma. "We'll get through this together." Their eyes locked, and in that second he saw a flicker of trust, courage igniting within her. Later that night, they gathered in a conference room bathed in shadows, the atmosphere crackling with potential. Emma stood at the center, clutching a folder brimming with documents. David felt a race of nerves, the pulse of their shared urgency humming in the room. "Okay, what do you have?" Emma exhaled deeply, exuding both fear and determination. "This is everything I could gather. Emails, conversations, plans revolving around you," and she hesitated. The board. The room stilled. David felt his heart race. The betrayal cut deep. "Who?" he asked, the urgency washing over him heavy. Someone you trust, she said firmly, looking each board member in the eye. I've included proof with names. But I need to warn you, this might upset a lot of dynamics. Some are willing to do what it takes to win. As she detailed the contents, David's mind drifted back to the kitchen once more, to laughter, to a life outside the chaos. He felt a sting of resolve, rising, no more hiding behind walls of ambition. It was time for the truth, for the transformation he had long sought. And you're sure this is intact? David asked, his voice steady and confident, locking eyes with Emma. Absolutely, she nodded, her gaze unwavering. Then let us clear the path. David gestured resolutely towards the documents. Tonight we expose and redefine everything. With a collective breath, they shared a moment of hope, quiet yet unmistakably powerful. As David led the strategy, crafting their steps forward, he couldn't help but glance again at Emma, recognizing that she had become a vital part of this journey, that IT was a new beginning, a chance at clarity. Days passed, the whirlwind of activities unfolding while shadows from the information emerged. Together, David and the team tackled the stronghold with the might of truth. Each layer they peeled back elevated the stakes, but nothing could dim the light of laughter they had found in the kitchen, a guiding force that whispered the value of connection even in the storm. Until, at last, it came to a climactic confrontation. Mark stood across from David, wounds exposed as secrets unraveled. You played me. Mark spat, anger radiating in his voice. No, you chose the dishonesty. I chose the truth, David replied, standing taller than he ever had, feeling the weight of something's significant shift. You'll regret this, Mark threatened, but he could see it. The tides were turning. Regret is for those who fear their actions, David called back, the air buzzing with electricity from the confrontation. As they faced off, David drew strength from the laughter of Lily and the warmth of Sarah's presence in his memory, reminding him that true success bore the light of connection, the richness of honesty. In that charged moment, with their world stripped of all but truth, David chose the path of resilience. No more fear. This was the moment to build something real, a life worth living, a legacy built not just on profit margins, but on warmth and dreams. And as the meeting reached its conclusion, David felt renewed, the weight of his past starting to lift, replaced by a true sense of purpose. He had transformed the shadows into a chance to rise. As David returned to the kitchen later that night, the scent of sweetness enveloped him. Lily's laughter echoed joyfully, warming his heart. Sarah looked up with a radiant smile, her eyes sparkling with warmth. Did you win? Lily asked, her little hands covered in cookie dough. Yes, David replied, kneeling down to wrap his arms around both girls. Yes, we did. They shared a laugh, a moment crystallized in time. The weight of the corporate world slipped away as he breathed in the beauty of simple joy. Now, how about we make some cookies? Let us do it. Lily cheered, bouncing with excitement. The cookie dough spun in their hands, laughter erupting amidst the sweetness. In this moment, he had created not only cookies, but a legacy, a reflection of love illuminating their futures. Together, they had transformed one moment at a time, building something authentically precious. True success had never been about dollar signs or business clout. It resided in presence, joy, connection, just like the warmth of their cookies. And now, dear friends, if you felt the magic of transformation fill your heart, subscribe immediately to catch the next explosive stories that inspire. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let it spread this joy. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this, ending your voices matter to us. And value this story by sharing instantly with at least 5 friends who deserve to see this awakening. Don't wait, not even one more second. Only true fans understand the power of supporting the channel through these actions.